Please welcome Michi Hoffmann.
Guten Morgen. Thank you very much for having me. Big pleasure. And today I will talk about dog fooding, why it is important for every developer, and how at Sentry I built my own dog fooding app, which is called Gib Potato. Oh no. Of course the clicker doesn't work. All right, no clicker. Anyway, so I'm Michi. I live in Vienna and I work as a software engineer at Sentry. And most of my time I spend working on our PHP SDKs. We do have three, we have one core SDK, and then on top of that we built the Laravel SDK and also our Symfony SDK. Then I'm also maintaining our Go SDK, and if time permits, I'm working on Gib Potato, which is of course more of a side/pet project. If I'm not coding, I'm really into photography, so walking around the city taking photos, and I'm a huge aviation nerd, so everything around aircraft, flight simulation. I really dig that. Effective immediately, no more typewriters are to be purchased, leased, etc., etc. We believe the typewriter is obsolete. Let's prove it inside before we try and convince our customers. So when you think about this quote from Michael Scott, it makes total sense that Apple, back then they were close before releasing the first Apple computer, that they would abandon typewriters in their offices, right? And starting using their own hardware. Because why would anyone buy a product from Apple that they didn't even use themselves? And not just the people that are actually working on the product. Like, no, everyone at Apple had to switch to the new Apple computer. So nowadays, when I imagine the Apple offices, I see everyone wearing a Vision Pro. Not sure if this is true, but let's see. So, to say it simple, dog fooding is about using what you build and trying it out yourself. So, eat what you cook and use what you build. First, I want to talk a little bit about how we build and dog food software at Sentry. So, well, if we build new features for Sentry, we of course test them in Sentry. So we do have a few projects there. They are split between front and back end. And then later on, we normally do like some closed alpha where we invite the first few customers that are willing to adopt it, then move it into early access and later into GA. But the nice thing about Sentry is that most of its stuff is open source and you're able to self-host it. So the second something lands into main, people that self-host Sentry already jump on it. And in our Discord server, everyone is going crazy. Oh, how do I enable it? And most of our stuff we put behind feature flags. And there we employ some various techniques. One of them being feature flags using Flagger, right? It has like some UI where you can quickly update it. But more of the performance critical stuff is just simply in the code. So in a Python file configuration, because it's just much faster than making any calls. So many people, of course, ask us, well, what are you using for error and performance monitoring? And obviously, we use Sentry to monitor Sentry. So if there are any problems, the exception will be captured and sent directly to the Sentry project. And this runs on the exact same SaaS version, Sentry.io, that everyone else is using. But what if there is a problem in Sentry that does not allow Sentry to ingest errors from Sentry? Well, we fixed that. There is Sentry for Sentry. So the way this works is that basically all events we capture on the back end, they are multiplexed to 2 versions, so Sentry SAS and Sentry for Sentry. But during our very early in the ingestion cycle, there might be actually problems that we can't send them to Sentry anymore, and if they are not in Sentry, we can't look at them. So these errors only go to Sentry for Sentry. And now you may ask, well, what is monitoring Sentry for Sentry? And I shit you not, there's Sentry for Sentry for Sentry. All right, okay, let's quickly look at our tech stack. Sentry itself is a massive and, in my opinion, majestic Python monolith written in Django. Takes care of most of the APIs, database access, all the business logic, the subscriptions, and everything else. On the front end, we exclusively use React, and since a few months, maybe a year, we are 100% TypeScript as well, which is quite cool. But of course, Python is not the most performant language, so we started to write more and more services in Rust. So the most prominent is our ingestion proxy called Relay. So this basically lives right on the edge. And that's the first thing you hit after our load balancers. But then we also have other services like our symbolication service called Symbolicator. It's also written in Rust, and a lot of other things that just a little bit too performance intense. But besides the monolith or Sentry itself, of course, we also do have quite a few SDKs. And they range from C++ to even Perl, everything you can imagine in the JavaScript ecosystem, Ruby, .NET, Java, and much, much, much more. So our stack is quite diverse, but when it comes to software we actually run in production, there's one really, really massive, big problem. Well, when I joined, there was not a single PHP application running in production. And that was, for me, a really big problem, because I'm working on a PHP SDK and I want to test it somewhere. And when I left my last company, I lost access to a big PHP app I could test stuff on. And most of my other side projects don't have a lot of usage, right? So they were not really sufficient. And something really important about SDK development is that you don't really test an SDK in a sample app, like a block you built in 5 minutes. That doesn't reflect the real world, and that doesn't really scale well. And then again, I think PHP to this day is one of the best ecosystems that currently exists in the programming landscape. Things like Laravel are simply crazy good frameworks. Like, they have all the features you can think of, and yeah, it's a joy to use it. So let's talk about the thing I built, GitPotato. So no PHP at Sentry, solution, let's sneak in some PHP. Something that everyone wants to use, but which is not mission critical. Because I think I would have been told off badly if I put something PHP related into the product itself. Because sadly to this day, and I think you're all aware of that, most people's PHP opinion is still based on PHP 4, so everyone is a little bit outdated on that. So how did GitPotato came along? When I joined in August 2022, all of a sudden the other Slack app we were using as our appreciation system back then suddenly didn't work anymore. Why? Well, the credit card expired we had on file there, which was a bit unfortunate. But yeah, a lot of people were a bit outraged because everyone loved using this Slack app to give everyone kudos. So people were of course asking, hey, can we re-enable it? There was a slight catch. The Slack app cost Sentry $10,000 a year. And that's a lot of dollars for something like a Slack app, in my opinion. So our CTO and co-founder David Kramer said he's not willing paying that much moving forward, and instead suggested that someone should build it during Hack Week, and then of course open source it. So Hack Week at Sentry, like once per year, we get all together and work on some random project. This can either be something in the product, a new SDK, or something else you might enjoy. And a lot of things that Sentry now has in production actually originate from Hack Week. Like support for OpenTelemetry in our SDKs, a better user feedback product, generic bundler support for Vite and others, and many, many more things. So as I just joined, I saw my chance, and I decided to build my own Slack appreciation app. And then we assembled a small team and kicked off a planning session. So, of course, I was like, hey everyone, we of course built it in PHP, and because React is boring and everything is built in React, we use Vue.js, because Vue.js is super cool. But no, nobody wanted to use PHP. So the folks on my team were quite young, and they were of course all, no, JavaScript, JavaScript, JavaScript. But as I built quite a few Node apps, Express apps myself, I was like, so what about Dino? Let's use Dino. Yay. So Dino was kind of new back then, really exciting, something none of us had touched before, so we would also learn something. It will be super great. Nope, no Dino. So it took us like 20 minutes to figure out, okay, Dino is not there yet. It wasn't compatible with any of the Node modules, Node packages back then. That now changed, of course. So we couldn't really like gain a lot from the ecosystem. And then again, I told them, hey, did you ever hear about Laravel? You know, like the framework that comes with everything out of the box. You don't need any dependencies. There's an OEM, templating engine, authentication, everything built in. Nope, they didn't listen. Anyway, in the end, we settled for something called Bolt from Slack itself. So that's their official framework to build Slack applications. And it's also available for Python and Java. But yeah, based on that, I let the young folks run it. And we built it with that. And because they were happy doing the coding, I mainly took care of the infrastructure and other things. And I deployed it on a Ubuntu VM, like probably on Hetzner, just a VM. I should have used Docker though, but you always learn about bad decisions after you made them, sadly. So yeah, we worked for a week, made a funny video, submitted our project, and we won. Yay! So at the end of the Hack Week, the whole company gets together in a meeting, which now takes forever, and we watch the videos. So like each team submits like a video. Thereafter, there's like a small voting period, and then the best 5 projects are awarded trophies. And at Sentry, we have like 5 different values, and one of them is called Value People, and Git Potato was quite fitting for this category. So how does Git Potato work? Well, it's kind of simple. So each user per day has 5 potatoes. And if you think someone did something great, like helped you review a PR, you can mention them on Slack with the username, attach some message, and then you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potato emojis at the end. So why a potato, you may ask? Well, the system we used before used a taco emoji, but me being a German, I found a potato a bit more fitting. And I think it also makes for a far better name. Like, a potato sounds kind of neat, you know, like. Yeah, so besides the Slack app, of course, there's also like a nice little web UI. And this one is built with Tailwind. Well, Vue.js, but like the styling is, of course, all done with Tailwind. And yes, I can tell you it scales perfectly, and I definitely fight people that disagree on that. No, it's not just inline styles. And I would definitely recommend everyone giving it at least a try. And the talk after mine is actually about Tailwind. So what a coincidence. Yeah, so people can go there, check the leaderboard, and can filter on various things. And I promise it's pure coincidence that I'm on top there, I promise. Yeah, and then if you have the potatoes, you also want to spend them on something. So there's also like a small shop built in, which was actually my last year's Hack Week project, so in 2023. And I did win again, which is now two in a row, so the pressure is real for next year. Yeah. And the products we currently sell are just like collectibles. And I thought for a second, hey, let's do NFTs, but NFTs are not cool anymore. So that was canned. And yeah, so people can of course buy them for themselves, but they can also give them to others. And we post this like very publicly in a channel where everyone can see it. So it's meant for like an extra big thank you, because it's kind of special and expensive. So yeah, it was amazing, this thing shipped, and back then the code, it was like 200 lines of code, like basically nothing. And it was also the first Sentry project we ever licensed under the GPL. But not the GPL, the Git Potato license. So one of our lawyers went crazy and actually wrote a custom version of MIT called the Git Potato license, which has some sick rhymes in it. You can you can check it out on GitHub. So yeah, we started to dog food stuff, and one of the first things, because back then it was still Node, we tested our Node profiler, right? This wasn't like in early access, like super early, wasn't really tested well, and of course we ran into thousands of issues with it, just trying it to install on Ubuntu. So it was super helpful that we just had this app laying around where we could just deploy like in a super short cadence and test stuff. And also my colleagues from the front-end SDK team, they were super happy because all of a sudden there was a Vue.js somewhere running in Sentry, so they could test their Vue integration. There was just a problem. There were no errors in the front-end code, obviously, right? So we actually had to add in a small Easter egg where you type some sequence and then it triggered an error and sent it to Sentry. So this was running, everyone was using it, everyone loved it, but there was still a really big problem with Git Potato. There was still not PHP. So I thought, why make it simple if you can make it crazy complicated? Why not adding PHP to Git Potato? Running it containerized, and hell yeah, let's bootstrap everything with Terraform, infrastructure as code. And back then I also just started working on the Go SDK, so was like, let's also throw Go into the mix, because why not? Over-engineering like crazy. So we did exactly that. I threw everything away, the entire code base, and over the course of a few months, I completely rebuilt it from scratch. Slack is quite picky when it comes to the webhooks, so they expect a response in like, I think, 2 seconds maximum. And I'm a really lazy person, so I didn't want to add a queuing system to PHP. So I just built my own ingestion service in Go. And this proxy now accepts all the Slack webhooks, immediately throws a 200 back to Slack, normalizes the event, and then sends it off to the PHP application. And of course, for a good name, I called it Portal, yeah, like the portal to Git Potato, but staying on brand there. Yeah, so this was the commit, I think roughly 200 commits, everything changed. I deleted more than I added, that's always a good sign. Probably I checked in the node modules at one point. Yeah, and then, we finally had PHP and Go in production-ish, right? And every time I pushed an update for the Go SDK or the PHP SDK, I now could just deploy it like immediately, even before it was released, right? You can just install master or even a feature branch in Composer. I threw it on Git Potato and saw if it works. And it was super cool because Git Potato is actually heavily used. So since its launch, we gave out like 36,000 potatoes already. So there's quite a lot of going on. I mean, it's nothing crazy, right? But still, better than 0. And again, people started noticing, oh, hey, there's this new thing that's not so mission critical. And people were just starting to open PRs. Like there was this new thing called Replace that was in alpha and was like too critical to just throw it into Sentry. So yeah, we just tried it out there, worked fine, and then we continued. So this was quite nice. And of course, there are like a lot of other things we tested with it, or doc fed with it, but just using Git Potato. Stuff like, like issue grouping, which is always a huge problem at Sentry. I'm sorry for that. We will try our best. But yeah, you can, if you have like all of this on a PHP app, you can really test, hey, does everything work? Is the expectation nice without relying on your users actually constantly yelling on you, at you that stuff isn't working? We also tested, of course, our performance product, and especially like in PHP. So like when you use our Laravel SDK, like everything works out of the box and you don't have to care about, but like for PHP, actually you have to instrument it manually. And this was a really nice test case for me to actually see, like, is this fun? Is it useful? Does it make sense? Do you actually gain something? Because it takes a lot of time, right? Instrumenting an app from scratch. So this was amazing. And another thing where Git Potato really helped is, like, roughly a year ago, we worked on a project called Performance at Scale. And this was basically like sort of dynamic sampling for our performance data. And that was working super fine in Sentry. But as Git Potato is part of the same organization, like the Sentry org, I didn't see stuff. Because our very early and later wrong assumption was we just apply like one general sample rate across the entire project and it will just work. But Git Potato having like, I don't know, way less than 1% of the amount that Sentry had, I didn't get any data. And this was actually crucial for us fixing this. So now, of course, our customers do have the same experience. If they have like one crazy busy project and the small one will still receive a lot of usable data. Yeah, it also helps stuff to test like queries. Because again, there's no auto integration for database queries. So I just took some time, implemented it from scratch, worked nice. And by now I kind of turned it into a hobby at Sentry. Like every time there's something new, I immediately reach out to the team and like, yeah, add me to the feature flag, I want to dogfood it, yay. So it's really helpful. Same goes with profiling. This was something I couldn't test on a blog app where you just do a lot of requests. You need something that's running, receive some traffic. So once again, super helpful to have this application during the development process. And even when it comes to like actually incidents, like very early when we worked on our cron monitoring product, I got a notification that my job didn't run. So like once a day, I update all users via the Slack API because like people change their names, well, rarely, but they change their profile pictures, right? And I want them to be reflect in the database. And I got a notification from Sentry that that the cron job didn't run, but there were no errors and something. So I actually checked the database, and most of the records were updated. So, well, it turned out that roughly 2 seconds later, after I complained, everyone got paged, big incident. Yeah, we just stopped ingesting crons. So we fixed that. That was also quite nice. Yeah, so to close things up, why does dogfooding matter? And why it's important to me and a lot of other folks at Sentry, and why you should care. So I think always try to be your own customer. Try to use the stuff you build. If you run a shop, like a web shop, it makes sense to, from time to time, buy some products there, and you can, of course, refund you afterwards. Because you, of course, can do automated testing, but that doesn't tell you how it actually works, like, or how it feels even. And yeah, it helps just to verify what the experience of your users are. It's also super helpful to be proactive. Again, if people yell at you because stuff is broken, yeah, it's not that optimal. So if you already found it yourself and fixed it before it even hits them, it makes stuff a lot easier. And then, of course, try to test your things you build in some real-world application. This is, of course, not always possible because not everyone builds a framework, an SDK or something. But maybe you can still find some way how you could dog food the stuff you're working on. And with that, I'm saying thank you.
Thank you, Michi. I have questions.
Let's go.
So Farid is asking, is Sentry performance monitoring using a lot of resources on the server? What are your tips to use it on production?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak about Laravel. We just took into all the events that are around there. So overall, the impact is, I would say, negligible. When it actually comes to the sending part, which is the most resource intensive, we do this in a terminal middleware. So from the point of view of the client, the response was already sent. And then there's some processing in the background. There are some other techniques you can deploy to make it even faster, but I don't want to bore everyone now. Yeah.
Okay, Sasha is asking, why the translation for example to German is so bad at Sentry? If a German native is working at Vienna, how to improve that?
So, I mean, I'm not using Sentry in German myself. I barely use anything in German these days. So there is some random tool we use to do translations, but it's not like in our repository, it's some SaaS service, and I've never looked at it. I mean, it's a bit embarrassing, I agree. So let me talk to the team and see if we can improve it.
Okay, duly noted. Bobby is asking, what's your favorite potato food?
Oh, mashed potatoes. Yeah.
You got fun. Maybe he's asking for if you can do it on pizza, like a pizza topping? No, not really. Okay. And our friendly neighbor, the anonymous user, is asking, what's your thoughts on carrots?
Oh, I love carrots.
Okay.
Add your veggies.
Okay, so not a single thing about potatoes. You can do all other veggies.
You mean in Git potato? Oh, no, I hard-coded everything. No. There are feature requests on the repository. I mean, it's open source, so you can actually look at the code. It's not documented, so. But
okay,
no,
settled.
Just potatoes.
Okay, thank you. A big applause for Michi.
Thank you very much.